Dr. Aaron Vega had never expected an emergency call from the other side of the galaxy. The interstellar medical outpost Haven 7 was a hub for routine care, mostly minor injuries, occasional illnesses, and the occasional exotic allergy. Nothing had prepared him for a call that would involve an alien queen, one of the most respected and feared beings in the galaxy. Aaron was finishing his morning rounds when the alert came through. The message was short, but urgent. Dr. Vega, your expertise is required. Talari, Queen Nalara, has suffered a spinal injury. Immediate presence requested. All protocols will be explained on arrival. He froze for a moment. The Thalari were a species few humans had seen up close. They were tall, elegant, and powerful. Their queens were not just rulers. They were living symbols of their people, revered and almost untouchable. And now one of them needed him. The outpost administrators watched him silently. Doctor. Vega knew what they were thinking. Are you ready for this? They seemed to ask without words. He swallowed hard and nodded. Readiness was a strange word in this context. He had trained for rare alien physiology, but nothing in his career had prepared him for a patient whose own species demanded that only a mate could touch her. The shuttle ride to the diplomatic station where the Queen was staying was tense. Aaron reviewed every manual he could find on Thalari anatomy. He memorized diagrams of their vertebrae, their muscle structure, and their unusual energy channels that allowed them to maintain strength beyond most human standards. Yet nothing could prepare him for the reality he would face. When the shuttle docked, he was met by the Queen's advisors. They were tall, like their queen, but thinner, with sharp eyes that seemed to measure his every movement. Dr. Vega, one said, his voice deep and measured. The Queen has suffered a strain along the dorsal column. Normally, only her mate may perform physical treatment. She has requested your observation and assistance under strict supervision. Aaron nodded, trying to hide the sudden pounding of his heart. The idea of touching the Queen was forbidden. He would have to find a way to help her without violating her laws. It felt impossible. The doors to the Queen's chambers slid open. Light flooded in, and there she was. Queen Nalara. She was taller than any human, her skin shimmering slightly with a subtle iridescence. Her eyes, large and deep, studied him with something he couldn't name. Curiosity, amusement, maybe a challenge? Aaron tried to steady his breathing as the advisor stepped back, leaving him at a safe distance. The Queen was seated on a high platform, one leg crossed over the other, her posture still regal even in discomfort. Her spine arched slightly, and Aaron immediately noticed the strain. The muscles along her back were tight and contracted, signs that even minor contact could worsen the pain. Dr. Vega, she said, her voice melodic but firm. You have been brought here to observe. That is understood. But understand this as well. Only my spouse may touch me. Any other attempt could cause irreparable harm. Aaron swallowed. I understand, Your Majesty, he said, his voice steady even though his heart raced.
I will follow your instructions exactly. She inclined her head slightly. Good.
Then, watch closely, human. Learn. And perhaps with time, you will understand why such measures exist. For hours, Aaron observed. The Queen's attendants guided her through subtle movements, stretching and positioning her with extreme care. He took notes furiously, sketching diagrams, noting every twitch of a muscle, every change in her breathing. He had treated dozens of alien patients before, but nothing had demanded such precision, such understanding of cultural and biological nuance. The Queen spoke occasionally, not at him directly, but to herself, murmuring words in the Thalari language. Aaron listened to the tone, the rhythm. There was a musicality to it that seemed almost like a meditation. Even without understanding the words fully, he sensed the care and discipline behind each motion. By mid-afternoon, Aaron noticed a small change. The Queen's brow relaxed slightly, and she allowed herself a few deeper breaths. He realized that the combination of ritual, observation, and gentle guidance was working, even if he could not touch her. It was a lesson in patience, in respect. Her gaze occasionally flicked to him. Once, she smiled faintly, just a corner of her mouth. Aaron felt a strange thrill. It was not just the honor of being in her presence. It was that he could feel the weight of responsibility, the trust that she was placing in him even without physical contact. Later, during a break, one of her advisors approached him.
"You are learning quickly," he said. "Few humans could observe so attentively without interfering."
The Queen takes note of that. But be warned, even observation must respect her boundaries.
Are nodded. "I will not fail, sir."
I want to help in any way I can without causing harm. When he returned to her presence, Queen Alira spoke more directly. Human, she said, your species has a way of thinking that is different. You see problems as mechanical, solvable. You do not yet understand that some pain is not merely physical. Some is bound by trust, by bond, by history. Aaron listened carefully. He realized she was speaking of her people, their culture, their laws. Healing her was not only a medical challenge, but a cultural one. If he misstepped, he could cause offense, or worse, political turmoil. Is there a way to help without touching your majesty? He asked cautiously. She considered this, her eyes thoughtful. Perhaps, but only if you prove that you respect what cannot be changed, that you are patient, careful, and attentive. Then, maybe, you can participate in my healing in some manner, indirect, but meaningful. The hours stretched into evening. Aaron continued observing, taking note of each subtle shift in her posture, each micro-expression, each careful movement. He found himself learning not just anatomy, but rhythm, harmony, patience. He felt as though he were learning a language without words. At one point, the Queen adjusted herself slightly and looked directly at him. "Human," she said softly, "you are persistent. Most would have given up. Most would have interfered, eager to act, to use what their hands know. But you watch. You respect. This is rare." Aaron felt a mixture of pride and nervousness. Praise from the Queen was not common, but he knew this was not flattery. It was acknowledgement of skill, of restraint, of understanding. As night fell, the advisors indicated it was time to rest. "Dr. Vega, you may leave for now," one said. "The Queen will continue her recovery under supervised care."
"But she requests that you return at dawn."
Aaron hesitated. "Is there anything I can do tonight, even just to observe?" The advisor shook his head. "No. Observation beyond the hours allowed is forbidden. You must respect the Queen's time and boundaries." Aaron nodded reluctantly. He left the chamber, his mind buzzing with what he had seen. There was so much more to learn. Not just the anatomy, but the rituals, the subtleties, the trust required. The Queen was more than a patient. She was a living testament to her culture, to the weight of leadership, to the rare intersection of biology and law. In his quarters, Aaron reviewed his notes again. Every diagram, every observation, every movement mattered. He realized that helping this Queen would require more than knowledge. It would require empathy, patience, and respect for something beyond human understanding. As he drifted off to sleep, he thought about her words. "Only my spouse may touch me." The idea was foreign, almost impossible to reconcile. And yet, he felt a spark of possibility. Perhaps there was a way to be of help without crossing boundaries. Perhaps he could earn her trust, step by step, and witness a bond that was not romantic, but profound. Morning came, and with it, the shuttle back to the Queen's chamber. Aaron felt a strange mix of excitement and anxiety. Today he would continue his observations, and maybe, just maybe, He would find a way to participate in her healing, in a way that respected her laws. When the chamber doors opened, Queen Nalira was already waiting. She gestured for him to approach, but still at a respectful distance.
Human, she said. You have returned. Good.
Today, I will allow you to take a more active role. But remember, every motion, every glance, must honor the rules of my people. Aaron nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He stepped closer, careful, alert, ready to learn, ready to observe, and ready to earn the trust of a being unlike any he had ever known. For the first time, he understood that this mission was not just about healing a back. It was about bridging two worlds through patience, respect, and understanding. The Queen adjusted herself slightly, signaling the start of the next phase of her recovery. Aaron took a deep breath. This would be a long, delicate process, and he was determined to honor it. In that moment, standing in the chamber with the alien queen who could not be touched by anyone but her spouse, Aaron Vega realized something profound. True healing sometimes required restraint more than action, understanding more than touch, and trust more than skill, and he was ready to learn. The next morning, Dr. Saab, Aaron Vega returned to the Queen's chambers, the gravity of his task pressing on him like a weight he could not lift. The shuttle ride had been silent, giving him time to review his notes again and again, memorizing every movement, every nuance he had observed the day before. He knew today would be more challenging. Observation alone would not be enough. Queen Nalira expected more from him now, a deeper understanding, an intuitive grasp of her condition, and perhaps a contribution that did not cross her sacred boundaries. When he entered, the Queen was already upright on her platform, her posture still carefully controlled but slightly more relaxed than before. Her attendants hovered nearby, their expressions neutral, almost stern, as if judging every detail of his presence. Nalira's eyes met his immediately. There was no greeting, no preamble, only the sharp, deliberate acknowledgement of his return. "You have come back," she said, her voice calm but resonant.
Good. Today we will test your understanding of what you observed.
You may assist indirectly, but remember, your actions must not violate what is forbidden.
Aaron nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat.
I understand, Your Majesty.
I will follow your instructions carefully. The Queen studied him for a long moment as though weighing not just his words, but his very presence.
Then, without another word, she moved into a series of subtle stretches. Each motion was deliberate, almost ritualistic. Her back arched and rotated with precision, her limbs moving in ways that were fluid yet exact. Aaron watched every detail, noting which muscles tensed and which relaxed, observing how each micro-movement affected her overall posture. He realized that helping her today would require attention to minute details. Every shift, every breath, every tilt of her head had meaning. He had to interpret her cues perfectly to make any contribution without touching her. It was a challenge unlike anything he had faced in his medical career. "Human," Nalira said suddenly, breaking his concentration. "You are learning to see, but can you understand?" Aaron tilted his head slightly. "I am trying, Your Majesty. I am observing carefully and making notes. I hope to understand more as we go." She regarded him silently for a moment. "Observation is not enough. Understanding comes from insight, from connecting what you see with what you cannot see." Aaron frowned slightly, unsure how to respond. Insight? Connecting what he could see with what he could not? He was a medic, trained in anatomy and biology, not in interpreting the unseen forces of alien culture. But he realized that this was exactly what she wanted him to learn. Not just about her body, but about her world, her people, and the rules that govern them. For hours he watched as she moved through a carefully choreographed routine, occasionally pausing to indicate subtle adjustments. He noticed that certain gestures seemed to signal pain or discomfort, while others were meant to test balance or flexibility. Slowly, he began to see a pattern. The Queen's movements were not random. They were a language of her body, communicating her state to those who knew how to read it. He began to replicate some of her movements on a nearby practice table, using anatomical models to trace the motions without touching her. This allowed him to understand the angles, the force, the tension required for proper alignment. He adjusted his notes, adding sketches and diagrams, cross-referencing every detail. At one point, the Queen paused mid-stretch and looked directly at him. "You are learning," she said, a faint note of approval in her tone. "But you must also learn patience. The body cannot be forced. Pain cannot be hurried. Understanding takes time, as does trust." Aaron nodded, though inside, impatience stirred. He wanted to help, to do something tangible, not just observe. Yet he understood that pushing too far could undo all progress. He forced himself to breathe slowly and focus. Patience, he reminded himself, was part of the treatment. Later, during a break, one of her advisors approached him. "You are doing well," the advisor said, quietly. Few humans would have the discipline to observe so carefully, but the Queen is cautious. She tests you as much as you test her. Aaron nodded. "I want to do everything I can to help, without causing harm or disrespect." The advisor's eyes softened slightly. "Good. Keep this in mind. What you do today may shape the Queen's opinion of your species. Actions, not words, carry weight here." When Aaron returned to the Queen's side, she was sitting more comfortably, her back still slightly curved but no longer rigid with tension. She gestured for him to stand near a marked spot on the floor, a respectful distance. "Human, today you will assist indirectly. Watch closely and respond to cues. Your movements will influence mine, but do not touch. Any misstep, and it could worsen the injury."
Aaron positioned himself carefully, studying the cues the Queen gave.
She began a new series of stretches, and he noticed that she relied on visual guidance and subtle pressure from objects in the room. Pads, cushions, and supports that allowed her to adjust her posture safely. Aaron realized that he could manipulate these objects to aid her, aligning them to relieve strain without violating her law. He moved slowly, adjusting a support pad here, tilting a cushion there, watching her reactions. When she shifted and her breathing eased, he allowed himself a small, silent sigh of relief. He was making a difference, albeit indirectly. During a pause, Nalaira spoke. "You are learning to anticipate, human."
That is rare.
"Most of your kind act first and think later. You observe, then act with care." "That is wise." Aaron felt a flush of pride. "Thank you, Your Majesty."
I hope to continue learning and to help as much as I can.
She inclined her head slightly.
We shall see.
"Observation and care are not enough. Tomorrow, you may participate in more complex exercises. But remember, trust is earned, not demanded." Aaron became acutely aware of every sound, every movement, every nuance of the Queen's breathing. He noted how her spine adjusted as she shifted weight, how her muscles responded to subtle shifts in support. He realized that he was beginning to understand her language without words, learning to predict what would relieve strain before she indicated it. At one point, an unexpected tension filled the room. One of the Queen's advisors moved to intervene, clearly concerned about a small adjustment Aaron had made. Nalaira's hand lifted slightly, stopping him.
Enough, she said sharply. This human understands.
Allow him to continue. Observe without interference. That is enough for now. Aaron froze. The room silent, except for the quiet hum of energy fields and the faint echo of the Queen's breathing. He realized how delicate this balance was. One wrong move could offend, cause injury, or destabilize the fragile trust he was building. Hours later, as the Queen concluded her exercises, Aaron felt a sense of accomplishment tempered by exhaustion. He had learned more in a single day than he had in years of studying alien anatomy. But more than that, he had glimpsed the complexity of a culture where healing, trust, and law were intertwined. As he prepared to leave for the evening, The Queen spoke again. Human, you have observed, you have acted with care, and you have learned patience. That is rare.
Many of your kind would have failed before now. Return tomorrow.
There is more to learn, and perhaps then I will allow you to participate in a way that goes beyond observation. Aaron bowed respectfully. I will return, Your Majesty, and I will do my best to honor your trust. The advisors escorted him out, and once again he returned to his quarters. Exhausted, he reviewed his notes, adding more sketches, more observations, more details about how the Queen's movements interacted with the supports in the room. He realized that he was not just learning to heal her body, he was learning to understand her entirely, her rules, her rituals, and the trust she required. That night, he could not sleep. His mind replayed every movement, every subtle cue, every glance the Queen had given him. He realized that the real challenge was not anatomy, but connection. He was building a bridge between human skill and alien tradition, and it was a fragile bridge, requiring care at every step. By dawn, Aaron was ready again. He boarded the shuttle, his heart steady but alert. Today would be another test, another chance to demonstrate understanding and restraint. But he also felt a growing curiosity. How much of the Queen's culture, her world, and her trust could a human truly grasp? And more importantly, could he ever help her fully without violating her sacred laws?
As the shuttle approached the station, Aaron felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him.
The Queen awaited, and with her, the chance to prove that a human could do more than observe. He could learn, he could assist, he could build trust, but only if he remained patient, attentive, and respectful. The doors opened, and Queen Nalira's figure was framed by the soft light of the chamber. Her eyes met his, sharp and steady. She gestured for him to take his place, and Aaron did so, careful to move with precision, aware that today would test not just his knowledge, but his ability to act without crossing boundaries. For the first time, he felt the true meaning of the Queen's words. Only my spouse may touch me. It was not a challenge to be solved with skill alone. It was a lesson in respect, patience, and understanding, and he realized he was ready to learn more than he ever imagined. The next day began with a quiet tension in the Queen's chambers. Dr. Aaron Vega felt it the moment he stepped inside. Queen Nalira was already on her platform, her posture controlled but relaxed, yet there was a sharpness in her gaze that suggested today would not be routine. Her attendants hovered near the edges of the room, silent and watchful, like statues come to life. Aaron knew they were watching him as much as he was watching her. Human, Nalira said, her voice calm but carrying authority that demanded attention. Today you will take a more active role. Observation alone is no longer sufficient. You will assist with my recovery using indirect methods, guided by your understanding of my body and your own species' techniques. But remember, one misstep and the consequences will be yours to bear. Aaron nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. He had spent days studying her movements, the subtle shifts in her posture, the tiny adjustments in her spine, and the ways she communicated discomfort without words. Now, he would put that knowledge to the test. He would influence her treatment without ever touching her. The Queen began a series of movements he had observed before, but this time she added variations, testing his understanding. She shifted her weight, stretched her limbs in unusual patterns, and rotated slowly, signaling him to adjust the cushions, supports, and mechanical aids in the room. Every move had to be precise. Even a small error could cause her pain or provoke disapproval from her advisors. Aaron moved carefully, repositioning a support pad under her midsection, tilting a platform to relieve strain, and adjusting a series of soft straps that allowed her to lean without stressing her spine. He watched her breathing closely, noting the slight changes that indicated relief or tension. Each correct adjustment brought a subtle relaxation in her posture. You are learning to anticipate, Nalira said after a few minutes, her voice carrying a hint of approval.
That is rare. Most of your kind act without thought, eager to intervene.
You watch, you analyze, you adjust. That is wise. Aaron felt a surge of pride, tempered by awareness of the stakes. He could not afford to misstep. The Queen's words were not praise lightly given. They were recognition of skill, patience, and respect for her laws. Hours passed as he continued to manipulate the environment around her. He learned to sense which adjustments would ease strain and which would cause discomfort. He began to anticipate her needs before she signaled them, moving supports preemptively, shifting cushions subtly, tilting platforms just enough to redistribute weight. He felt a connection forming, not through touch, but through observation, intuition, and careful action. During a short break, one of her advisors approached him quietly. "You are performing exceptionally, human," the advisor said. "The Queen notices your care and precision. But know this, there are limits. The Queen's culture values restraint above all else. Exceed your bounds, and she will withdraw from you." Aaron nodded. "I understand. I will continue with patience and respect."
As the day progressed, NetNarrator introduced more complex movements, testing his ability to respond. She twisted, rotated, and leaned in ways that made subtle adjustments crucial.
Aaron realized that the Queen's body was a combination of strength and fragility, capable of incredible endurance, yet sensitive to small misalignments. He adjusted supports, modified angles, and used mechanical aids to redistribute tension. Each correct adjustment elicited a small, almost imperceptible relaxation in her shoulders or spine. "You are growing more attuned," NetNarrator said after an hour of this careful work. "You notice the shifts before they fully manifest. That is rare, human. Few would have the patience or attention to reach this level."
Aaron allowed himself a quiet sigh of relief.
He had learned to influence her healing without direct contact, using observation, reasoning, and gentle manipulation of her environment. He realized that this was more than medical skill. It was a form of communication, a bridge between human understanding and alien custom. Then, a subtle challenge appeared. One of the Queen's advisors stepped forward, eyes narrowed.
"You are overstepping," the advisor said. "You are interfering in ways that could violate protocol."
NetNarrator raised a hand, stopping him.
Enough. This human understands.
Allow him to continue. Observation and careful action are sufficient.
"Do not interfere further."
Aaron froze, aware of the delicate balance. One wrong move could undo all the trust he had built. He adjusted his focus, careful to follow the Queen's guidance and respond only to cues she gave directly. The day continued with more exercises, each testing his judgment and precision. The Queen's movements were deliberate, almost ritualistic, and Aaron had to interpret them as both medical signals and cultural signals. He realized that understanding her culture was as important as understanding her anatomy. The Queen's laws were not arbitrary. They were deeply tied to her identity, her people, and the way she experienced pain and healing. By afternoon, the tension in the room had eased slightly. Aaron had learned to anticipate discomfort, to adjust supports proactively, and to interpret subtle signals of strain. He noticed a shift in the Queen's demeanor as well. She began to speak more freely, sharing glimpses of her thoughts, her responsibilities, and her solitude as a ruler. "You are persistent, human," she said quietly. Most would have abandoned these lessons long ago.
You continue despite difficulty, despite the strange limitations imposed by my laws.
That is rare. Aaron bowed slightly. "I wish only to help, Your Majesty." "I hope to do so without causing harm or disrespect." The Queen inclined her head. "You are learning? Perhaps soon you will understand that healing is not merely a physical act. It is trust, patience, and understanding combined. And that is what I require."
As the hours passed, Aaron grew more confident in his ability to assist without touching.
He began to notice subtleties he had missed before. The way her breathing shifted in anticipation of movement. The slight tremor in a limb when tension was too great. The patterns of muscle engagement that signaled discomfort. He adjusted supports, repositioned cushions, and used mechanical aids with increasing skill, each time testing the results against her reactions. During a brief pause, NetNarrator regarded him thoughtfully.
"You are growing attuned," she said. "But there is more to learn."
You must perceive not only what is visible, but also what is hidden. Pain is not always physical, human. Sometimes it is tied to memory, to responsibility, to trust.
Aaron nodded slowly.
He realized she was speaking not just of her back, but of her experiences as queen, the weight of her position, and the way her body responded to stress and expectation. Healing her was not just a medical challenge, it was a lesson in empathy, discipline, and understanding the invisible burdens that shaped her movements. As the day drew to a close, Aaron felt a mixture of exhaustion and accomplishment. He had guided her through complex exercises without touching her, interpreted subtle cues, and adjusted her environment to relieve strain. But more importantly, he had begun to understand the queen herself, her culture, her expectations, and the rare trust she was extending to him. NetNarrator regarded him once more, her gaze steady and calm. "You have done well today, human. You have observed, you have acted with care, and you have begun to understand the nature of my pain. Tomorrow, you may participate in exercises that require more skill and judgment. But remember, patience and respect are your greatest tools."
Do not forget them. Aaron bowed deeply. I will remember, Your Majesty. I will continue to learn and to assist in every way I can.
The advisors escorted him out once again, their eyes evaluating him silently. Aaron returned to his quarters, reviewing his notes in detail. He sketched diagrams, noted the subtle interactions between her muscles and the supports, and reflected on the lessons he had learned. Healing the queen was more than science. It was a delicate dance of observation, interpretation, and careful action. That night, he could not sleep. He replayed every movement, every micro-adjustment, and every signal the queen had given him. He thought about her words. Pain is not always physical. Sometimes it is tied to memory, to responsibility, to trust. He realized that he was not just treating a back injury. He was learning the art of trust and understanding. Across species, by dawn, he felt a renewed determination. Today, he would face more challenges, more complex movements, and more subtle signals. He knew that the bond he was forming with the queen was fragile and required constant attention, patience, and care. But he also sensed that progress was being made, and that perhaps one day he would be able to assist her in a way that went beyond observation. When he entered the chamber, NetNarrator was waiting. She gestured for him to approach, her eyes sharp and assessing. "Today," she said, "you will demonstrate your ability to respond to complexity."
Your movements will influence mine. Pay attention, human, and do not fail. Aaron positioned himself carefully, aware of every detail. He adjusted cushions, repositioned supports, and monitored the queen's breathing, every action guided by observation, understanding, and respect.
The challenge was immense, but he felt a growing confidence in his ability to contribute without violating her laws. For the first time, he realized that the queen's statement, "Only my spouse may touch me," was not a limitation, but a teaching. It was a lesson in restraint, observation, and the power of indirect action. By respecting her boundaries, he could achieve more than brute intervention ever could. Hours later, as the exercises concluded, the queen spoke again. "You have done well, human. Your actions today demonstrate understanding, patience, and insight. Few would have achieved this level of skill without direct contact. You have my acknowledgement. Continue, and perhaps you will reach the level where trust allows more." Aaron felt a quiet sense of pride and relief. He had passed another test, one that measured not just skill, but patience, empathy, and respect for a culture far beyond his own. He knew the challenges were not over, but he had taken another step toward bridging the gap between human and Thalari understanding. The morning light filtered softly into the queen's chamber, casting long shadows across the platform where Queen Nalaira sat, her back still tense but markedly improved. Dr. Aaron Vega entered carefully, every step measured, aware that today would be different from the previous days. Today was the culmination of weeks of observation, patience, and careful, indirect intervention. Today, he would be tested in ways that demanded not only skill, but intuition, judgment, and unwavering respect. The Queen's gaze met his immediately, sharp and assessing. "Human," she said, her voice calm yet commanding. "You have returned. Today, your understanding will be put to the ultimate test.
Your actions will influence my recovery directly. Remember everything you have learned."
Every movement, every choice, carries weight. Aaron nodded, his heart steady but his mind alert. He knew that this was more than a medical exercise. This was a test of trust, of comprehension, of how deeply he had absorbed the lessons of restraint and observation that Nalaira had taught him. She began with subtle movements, rolling her shoulders and stretching her spine carefully. Aaron adjusted supports, tilted cushions, and monitored her posture, each motion guided by the knowledge he had accumulated over days of careful study. He noticed immediately the fine shifts in her breathing, the slight tensing of her muscles, and the way her eyes flicked toward him when a placement was correct or needed adjustment. "You are attentive," she said quietly. Few humans would notice such minute details. Most act too quickly, too confidently, and disrupt balance instead of restoring it. You observe first, then act. That is rare, human. "Continue!" Aaron felt a quiet surge of pride but forced himself to remain focused. He had learned that pride could lead to error. Patience, humility, and observation had served him far better than confidence alone. The Queen moved into a series of more complex stretches, testing his ability to anticipate her needs. He adjusted supports under her midsection, realigned cushions beneath her knees, and shifted a mechanical aid to redistribute weight evenly across her spine. Every action required precision. A single misplacement could cause discomfort or worse. He noticed her breathing becoming smoother, her posture gradually relaxing. The subtle changes thrilled him silently. For the first time, he realized that he was not just assisting in her physical recovery. He was beginning to influence it in a meaningful way without ever touching her. At one point, the Queen paused, turning her eyes toward him. "Human," she said softly, "you are beginning to understand. Healing is not always about the body. It is trust, patience, and connection. You have shown all three." Aaron's chest tightened. Trust. That was the word he had been striving toward for weeks. He understood now that it was not given lightly, and the Queen had been testing him not just for his skill, but for his ability to respect her boundaries and understand her as a person, a leader, and a being of great power. The exercises grew more intricate. Nalaira twisted, extended, and leaned in ways that required Aaron to anticipate shifts, adjust supports with precision, and interpret subtle physical signals. His mind raced as he monitored every detail. But his hands moved steadily, guided by understanding rather than haste. He felt a rhythm emerging, a dance of observation, anticipation, and careful action that seemed almost effortless after weeks of preparation. One of her advisors stepped forward, clearly anxious.
Your Majesty, this human is performing actions that are unprecedented.
"Are you certain?" Nalaira raised her hand, silencing him. "Enough," she said firmly. "He acts with respect and insight. Allow him to continue. Observation and careful intervention are sufficient. Your concern is noted, but unnecessary." Aaron froze momentarily, aware of the delicate balance in the room. One wrong move could undo all the progress he had made. He adjusted his focus, centering on the Queen's cues, responding only to what she indicated, and letting intuition guide him, where observation alone fell short. Hours passed in this delicate interaction. Aaron adjusted supports, moved cushions, and shifted platforms with steady hands. each action informed by careful study and growing instinct. He began to notice subtler cues, the way her breathing shortened when a support was slightly misaligned, the faint tension in a shoulder when weight was uneven, and the relaxation in her eyes when adjustments were perfect. Finally, NetNarrator paused, rising slightly to stand on the platform with the assistance of carefully arranged supports. Aaron watched every detail, adjusting the environment so she could maintain balance while stretching fully. He felt a thrill of success when he saw her spine elongate slightly, the tension visibly easing. "You have done well," she said, her voice soft but resonant. "Your actions today have not only aided my recovery, but they have also demonstrated understanding beyond observation. Few would have achieved this level of skill without touching me."
You have earned recognition, human. Aaron felt a surge of relief and accomplishment, tempered by the awareness that this was not the end.
Healing, he realized, was not a single event, but a continuous process. Yet he also sensed that the bond he had built through restraint, observation, and respect had reached a new depth. During a brief pause, the Queen spoke again, her tone reflective. "Human, you have shown that trust can be extended without violation, that understanding can be conveyed without touch, and that patience can achieve what force cannot. You have learned well, but remember, these lessons extend beyond healing. They are lessons of connection, empathy, and cooperation. These are the foundations upon which lasting bonds are built."
Aaron nodded solemnly. "I understand, Your Majesty."
"I am grateful for the guidance you have given me." She inclined her head slightly, then continued.
"There is more to accomplish, and the final stages of recovery require precision, focus, and understanding. You have proven yourself capable, human."
Now we must complete this process. The exercises grew even more complex. NetNarrator performed controlled twists and extensions, testing both her own strength and Aaron's ability to respond without error. He adjusted supports under her arms, shifted cushions beneath her legs, and monitored every movement with painstaking care. The room seemed to move as a single organism, with the Queen and Aaron acting in subtle synchrony, connected by observation and understanding rather than touch. At one point, a sudden sharp movement caused the Queen to wince slightly. Aaron froze, then quickly adjusted the support beneath her midsection, allowing the strain to shift safely. She looked at him, eyes narrowing briefly, then relaxed.
"Well done," she said, a faint note of approval in her voice. "You are learning to anticipate, human."
That is rare and valuable. By late afternoon, NetNarrator's posture had improved significantly. The tension in her back had eased. Her breathing was steady, and her movements were smoother. Aaron had guided her through an intricate series of exercises without ever violating her boundaries, proving that skill, observation, and understanding could bridge even the most challenging cultural and physical divides. As the session concluded, the Queen regarded him quietly, her gaze steady and thoughtful. "You have performed admirably, human. You have honored my rules, respected my culture, and aided my recovery. Your actions demonstrate the value of your species, not only in skill but in wisdom, patience, and respect. Few humans would have succeeded where you have."
Aaron felt a mixture of pride, relief, and humility. He bowed deeply.
"Thank you, Your Majesty. It has been an honor to assist you and to learn from you." The Queen inclined her head slightly.
You have proven that healing, trust, and understanding are intertwined. Your success today is not merely medical, it is a testament to what can be achieved when cultures meet with respect and care.
Remember this lesson, human. It will serve you well in all future endeavors.
The advisors exchanged glances, their expressions softening as they recognized the depth of the achievement. The Queen had not only healed physically, but had extended trust in a way that was rare and meaningful. Aaron had navigated cultural boundaries, applied knowledge with precision, and earned recognition that would resonate far beyond the chamber. As Aaron prepared to leave, NetNarrator spoke once more.
"Human,
You may return to your outpost with the knowledge that you have accomplished what few could. Your actions have strengthened the bonds between our peoples, and that is a gift beyond measure. Continue to apply what you have learned, for understanding, respect, and patience are tools as powerful as any medicine. Aaron bowed again, feeling the full weight of the Queen's words. I will, Your Majesty. I will carry these lessons with me always. Once outside the chamber, he exhaled deeply, a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration washing over him. The weeks of observation, careful action, and constant vigilance had culminated in a success that felt both profound and humbling. He realized that the true reward was not the praise or recognition, but the knowledge that he had bridged a gap between worlds, demonstrating that humans could offer wisdom, skill, and understanding even in the most challenging circumstances. Back at his quarters, Aaron reviewed his notes one final time. Every diagram, every observation, every subtle adjustment had been recorded meticulously. But more than the technical details, he noted the lessons he had learned about patience, trust, and the value of restraint. These were lessons that extended far beyond the healing of a single back. They were lessons about connection, empathy, and the capacity of humans to understand and respect life in all its diversity. Later that evening, as the sun set over the station, Aaron reflected on the journey he had undertaken. He had arrived expecting to treat a spinal injury and had discovered something far greater: the profound importance of understanding, patience, and trust in bridging cultures. Queen Nalira had allowed him to participate in her recovery not through touch, but through observation, respect, and careful action. In doing so, she had demonstrated that humans were capable of more than skill. They could honor other worlds through empathy and insight. He thought about her words: healing, trust, and understanding are intertwined. They would remain with him forever. Through this experience, he had seen firsthand the power of human determination, intelligence, and respect. He had proven that humans could navigate complexity, adapt to foreign cultures, and build bridges even under the most delicate circumstances. The Queen's final acknowledgement was more than praise. It was a testament to the value of humanity in the galaxy. By respecting her laws, observing carefully, and acting with care, Aaron had contributed to healing, diplomacy, and mutual understanding. He had become more than a medic that day. He had become a symbol of what humans could achieve when guided by respect, patience, and empathy. As night fell, the lights in the Queen's chamber dimmed, and Aaron retired to his quarters. He knew that his work here was done, but the lessons would continue to influence him for years to come. He had been tested, challenged, and pushed beyond his comfort zone. And in the end, he had succeeded, not by touching, not by forcing, but by understanding, observing, and respecting. Queen Nalira would recover fully, and their peoples would benefit from the trust and understanding built through careful, patient actions. And Dr. Aaron Vega, human medic from a distant star, had learned a truth far greater than any textbook could teach. Sometimes the most powerful healing comes not from hands, but from patience, respect, and the willingness to understand another being completely. As he gazed out at the stars, Aaron felt a quiet satisfaction. He had faced a challenge that seemed impossible, and had emerged not only successful, but wiser. Humanity's place in the galaxy was not defined solely by technology or strength, but by the ability to bridge differences, honor diversity, and show empathy where it was most needed. And in that quiet moment, he understood the profound lesson of his time with the Queen, that the truest power lay not in what one could touch, but in what one could understand.